how to handle return requests that you receive beyond the 30-day eBay return window. And this is something that each of you are going to probably have to deal with. So let's talk about that on the other side. So without any further ado, let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is John from Flippin' Ain't Easy. And the question that I have for you guys is, how are you going to handle that customer that comes to you and says, you know what, I want to return this item. I know I bought it back in October, but I want to return this item. Now, whether or not this has happened to you before or not, this happens. Especially this time of year, Christmas time, someone buys an item from you in September, maybe even October, maybe even November, depending on how you have your return policy set up, whether it's 30 days or 60 days. And they give that gift to Aunt Thelma. She doesn't quite like it. Or maybe they notice something about the item that they didn't think about when they bought it. Maybe there's a problem with the item. And now they want you to take a return beyond the return window that you have with eBay. How are you going to handle that? And I think this speaks, in my opinion, I think it speaks to how you run your business. For me, it is very clear. eBay offers a generous 30-day return window. And I do 30-day returns. Some of you do 60-day, and I respect that. That's your business decision. If you feel that maybe helps you in some way with your customers, it maybe drives more confidence to the customer about the product you're selling, I get it. But what happens if the buyer is requesting to return the item after that? Now, I know that if the item is still within the 90-day window, eBay will give the buyer the option to open a return. And as we've discussed on a previous video, eBay will even try to maybe make you feel bad as a seller if you don't accept that return beyond your 30-day or in some cases the 60-day window. So eBay doesn't make it easy for us sellers. They make us feel like the right thing is just caving into the buyer. But I got to ask you this. If you were to buy something, let's say in September at a brick and mortar store, maybe a Walmart or Target, that type of thing, give it to Aunt Thelma for Christmas, and then she doesn't like it, and you, of course, have a receipt dated back in September, do you think they're going to give you a refund when you take it back? You may have to talk to the manager. You may get an exception made for you, but most people won't. They'll get a store credit maybe, but that's about the extent of it. And that's because they're running their business. It's a business. They have to handle every situation, at least they're supposed to handle all their customers the same way, and that's what policies are for. Now, do you even have a policy maybe in your mind? Of course, you don't need to have it written down, but as a business owner, you need to at least think about these things. And I'm sure that if you've sold enough stuff on eBay by now, you've probably already encountered this. But what are you going to do when you get that person coming your way asking you for a return? Now, okay, let me just say this. As a seller, it is our responsibility to deliver a product as described in the listing, okay? So if you've delivered a product that's not as described, maybe you screwed up, you sent them red instead of blue, whatever, part of it's on you. But I think the responsibility lies with the buyer when it comes to at least verifying what they received is what they paid for before they decide to wrap it and give it to Aunt Thelma under the tree. Hopefully, your buyer isn't buying something that's used, or maybe something parts or repair or something crazy like that to give as a gift. But if they are, and it's not new, brand new, wrapped, maybe sealed, or just brand new, if they're buying something like that, they should at least test it to verify that what they actually got was everything's fine with what they got. And to me, I think that's a huge part of the equation. Now, I recently encountered this buyer who just yesterday contacted me They bought this blow-up Santa inflatable. It's like a 6-foot inflatable Santa holding I guess there's a LED sign. Okay, so once you plug this thing in, it blows up the Santa, and there's an LED sign that also lights up, and you can program it to say how many days are left before Christmas. Okay. Now this person bought it back in September. I actually had to take this thing out of the box, plug it in my living room. I have some high ceilings, so I can kind of do that. I think this was a 6-foot, maybe an 8-foot. And we plugged it in, took the many photos, of course, did the background removal and all that. But I did notice that the LCD had an issue, okay? And it wasn't displaying the left number properly. I mean, it may, I think, display like the 1 properly, but like the 2 or 3, it didn't show up right. And I made a point to not only state that in the item description, the condition description, but also took a photo of it in one of the, I think, 12 photos. And we even did a video on this item. And we did all the different views of the items so you can see. And I thought that one came out pretty good. So this person contacts me just yesterday, and it's 94 days beyond the date they bought this thing, okay? So we're talking, I can't even go into the listing anymore. I can go in and do that custom order search, go back up to 2 years that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and I was able to find the listing to see when it was sold, to get an idea and see the photo I remember that one, to remember exactly which one, because we sold about 10 of these different inflatables over the last 3 months on eBay, Mercari, all that kind of thing. So I wasn't quite sure which one this person was talking about. Once I saw the main photo in the listing, I knew exactly this is the one that had the LCD problem that I knew about, and I made a point to explain in the listing. So this buyer decides to contact me and says, "Hi there, I opened this up for Christmas only to discover the LES, I guess he meant LED, is broken and does not display the numbers correctly. I would like a refund, please." Now, I'm like, when I first saw this message, I'm like, wait, when did you buy this thing? And I went back and it was September. So I couldn't even open the listing, but I remember distinctly. We deal with a lot of different conditions of items, but when I notice an item and make a point to not only document the problem with that item, but also take photos of that item, and you as a buyer don't look at that, you just willy-nilly just buy it based on the first photo you see in the listing, and maybe even then didn't see the issue, whose fault is that? So this person buys the item. Now, to make things even more interesting, this person's in Australia. This person in Australia used the global shipping program, so we shipped it to that person. And so they received the item just fine, and they wait until the 14th of December, like 11 days before Christmas, before setting up their Christmas decorations. Never mind the fact that their neighbors have already set up their Christmas decorations like 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks ahead of this. You decide that 10 days prior to Christmas, and you have an inflatable that has a Christmas countdown feature, right? The LCD that he's talking about. And you don't set it up until the 14th? I find that awfully weird, but why wouldn't you, if you knew this was an open boxed item, okay, and it had issues because it was returned originally because of the issues, which I explained in the listing, why not, upon receipt, would you not just set this up in your living room, plug it in, and just make sure that it works okay? And I think buyers have an onus, a responsibility to at least do that, right? Regardless of how far in advance they're going to be buying. In this case, they're buying it for Christmas time. But why wouldn't they check it when they got it? And then once it works, put it away. Okay, I guess I'll put it up on the 14th of December, even though, this probably should have been put up in November. But I digress. This person contacts me with that message. So I went back to them and I just let them know the basic message that we offer a 30-day return through eBay. However, I can tell you with certainty that this was not only mentioned in the listing, I also took a photo of this as well. eBay will not allow the listing to open since it's beyond the 90-day period. We are now 94 days from the purchase date, and it's too late to offer any sort of return solution. I thought that was answered in a respectful manner. You know, the buyer would see, yeah, maybe I should have looked at it a little sooner. And wow, you're saying that there is a problem with it. Maybe I didn't see it as a buyer. But of course, you know how buyers are, right? Most buyers, or I can't say most buyers, a lot of buyers aren't going to just take that answer willy-nilly. And I should have probably realized that. They came back and said, that is absolutely ridiculous and robbery that you can sell faulty goods. It's a change of mind. It is faulty. Okay, what part of, I've mentioned that in the listing, I took photos of that in the listing, is me trying to say that they changed their mind. I acknowledged in the listing that the item had issues. It was still fully functional as an inflatable. It just had that one digit had a problem displaying a 2 or a 3. By the way, this person doesn't even need the 2 or the 3 at this point because they're trying to put it up 11 days prior to Christmas, okay? So it's not even a function that they need at this point. So I replied back, and I couldn't help myself, guys. You know, at this point, we're 94 days in. The buyer obviously did not read back in September the issues. They probably saw the first photo and said, this is the one I want to buy. The price was right because I had it discounted because of this particular issue. And they had it sent to them in Australia, okay? So I just had to say it, guys. I had to come out and say it. I wasn't going to be nasty. I never call names. Of course, you should never do that. This is your business. But I had to point out some obvious things that this buyer was simply missing here. Maybe I'm wrong for doing it, but sometimes we just, you know, have that urge to say what's on our mind. And in this particular case, I had to do it, guys. And so I came back and said, you've had this for months now. Not only did you not read the listing where many photos were taken of this when plugged in, this was also mentioned in the listing. I suppose you didn't read nor did you take the time to look at the photos. So when this arrived, you made no attempts to check it out. In fact, you waited until there were 2 weeks left before Christmas, even though your neighbors have had their decorations up for weeks. You bought an item on the internet and did not educate yourself about the return policy of what you were buying in case something wasn't right. And to blame me for this when you did none of the above, ? I did everything I could do as a seller, including stating the issue in the listing. Unfortunately, you did not do your due diligence as a buyer, yet somehow it's my fault. Haven't heard back from them. I'm sure I will. You know, this is the only avenue this person has. I mean, I think sometimes you just have to come out and just put it out there like it is. The buyer neglected to do any of these things that I mentioned in my rebuttal. And if they had done maybe one of them, like put it out like maybe the end of November, it would have been beyond my 30-day window, but at least I'd have access to the listing to be able to point to them, right? They should have checked this out when they received it. Even if the item was brand new, I think, because it was sent all that way in transit from the United States to Australia, it's probably a good idea to open it up, make sure it works, make sure something wasn't thrown off of that 747 onto the tarmac that we've talked about in the past, right? And, you know, there's something that's not broken in 1,000 pieces, because this does have hard plastic parts, like there's a fan assembly to inflate the unit, and of course that LCD unit as well that's there, that's breakable, right? Things can happen, but that's not what happened here. This was in the same condition that I sold it as. So that's my scenario. Now, this is it. I'm not giving them any money back. I'm not going to offer a refund. This person said, give me a refund, please. No, it doesn't work that way. If you're going to buy something on eBay as a buyer, you need to not only educate yourself with how eBay works, you need to also understand how the return policy works. But I can tell you, there are no sellers on eBay who would have a 90-day return policy, okay? So this is still 100% on the buyer, yet they're upset at me. Now, they can't leave a negative feedback. It's beyond 60 days. I'm not worried about any of that. I suppose they can try to do a chargeback here, but just with the correspondence between myself and the buyer didn't do their job. They didn't do their part to not only read the listing, but to verify that it was a functional item upon receipt. Of course, I'm not going to hold this against my wonderful Australian family out there. We have had issues before. Remember that item I sold in the United States that was shipped by Global Shipping out to Australia, and it didn't come with an Australian plug, nor was it advertised as such. That was also another fun one. So yeah, bad buyers exist everywhere. Unfortunately, it's the ones in Australia that like to hit me up, unfortunately. But it is what it is. But I guess it returns back to the original question, and that is, how are you going to handle return requests that you receive beyond your return window? Because it's inevitable, it's going to happen. Let me just say, guys, you're not obligated, okay? You're not Walmart. We are not large corporations, and maybe they can easily make an exception for a buyer if a manager at one of their big box stores chooses to do so. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of smaller sellers out there, and that's kind of what this message is for. The larger sellers, I guess they can absorb it if they choose to do so. But my question to you and every serious eBay reseller out there is, are you going to take the return? Are you going to give them their money back? Are you going to send them a return label? Because in many cases, it's not, the listing's not even going to be available for you to see. How are you going to handle that? So I want to know that down below. Or is it just, are you thinking that maybe the way I handled it was bad and was bad customer service? I couldn't help myself in this case, guys. Normally I won't tell the buyer what they should have done, but to sit here and tell me that I am committing robbery, I'm selling faulty goods, you're right. I was selling a faulty good that I mentioned in the listing. The fact is, it's the buyer's fault in this particular case, and they won't accept the blame. And of course, they have to find someone to blame, and I was the guy. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content, and hit that notification bell so when I go live or make another video, you get to be notified, and on the lives, maybe even get a chance to be a part of it. So it's inevitable, guys. You're going to get buyers like this that are going to hit you up after Christmas. In my case, it was before Christmas, but I'm sure I'm going to get more. And you got to prepare yourself and ask yourself how you're going to handle these returns. And that's a question that each of us has to ask, but yet another example of how sometimes flipping ain't easy. And I want you guys to have an excellent rest of your day, and we will talk to you very soon.